So the current senators, and they will be continuing, are Senator Hume, Patterson, Van, Raff Ciccone, Jess Walsh, and Senator Janet Rice. Those who are up for re-election are Sarah Henderson, Senator Mackenzie, Senator Kitching, possibly Senator Carr, who has yet to announce what he's going to do. Senator Thorpe is up for re-election, and Senator Ryan, who's the president of the Senate currently, has announced his retirement, and a replacement will be appointed soon.
So let's go through the basics first. And it was interesting with that little quiz there, the question. Looks like I have to go gently with most people. So the basics are there are 12 senators for each state plus 2 for ACT, 2 for Northern Territory, make 76 total senators in the federal parliament. They can all be elected all in one time, only for a double dissolution. That doesn't happen very often. Normally, we elect half the Senate concurrently with the House of Reps, and that means we're looking for 6 senators in each state. And that's why there were 2 columns with the list we just saw with Susan. So they, the other weird thing is they start on July the 1st. Doesn't matter when the election is, their term starts on July the 1st. So in the next election, we're looking for 6 candidates for 6 years, and they will overlap the 6 that are already there and who have completed 3 years of their term. So if we're going for 6 candidates to be elected next time, they require 1/7 of the total formal vote. And this is called a quota. And in Victoria, that's approximately 540,000 votes. Now, no individual can get that many votes, nowhere near it. So how do these people actually get elected? Let's have a look. Kate, next slide. Okay, so the ballot paper, which I think Matt will go through in more detail after, has an above the line section and a below the line section. 95% of voters vote above the line. In fact, most major parties will give you a how to vote card and tell you to put 6 numbers above the line. And people tend to do that. They vote for their tribe or their brand or the issues or their celebrity candidate. And what I'm going through this time is I'm going to show the process of determining the senators in Victoria in 2019. It's quite a long process and took 367 counts to elect or exclude each individual candidate one at a time. Next slide, please, Kate. So what happened in 2019? Let's start, we'll illustrate it with the Lib Nat. So they have 1 column on the ballot paper, and at count 1, if you have a look at below the line, James Patterson got 30,000 votes, which is way short of the 550,000 that he needed to be elected. So how did he get elected? We see Jane Hume also got elected with only 4,000 votes, and David Van eventually gets elected with 1,000 votes. Now, the way this happens is we've got this above the line box that you can tick on the ballot paper, and 1.3 million voters put a 1 in the Liberal box. And that 1.3 million votes goes directly transferred to James Patterson, and you can see now he's easily got more than 540,000 votes, and he's elected in count 1. He's got way more than he needs, so the surplus then is transferred down to Jane, and she's got more than a quota now, so she gets elected in count 3, and her extra or surplus votes get shuffled down to David Van, but at this stage he hasn't got enough to get elected. If you look at that dark green row there in the table, you'll also see that 1.3 million votes is 34% of the total votes, and it's more than 2 quotas because 1 quota is about 14%. Next slide. Thank you. So there are certainties and chances, if you like. Major parties are certain to get quotas and get people elected straight off in the first count. And after 4 counts, 4 Senate seats have already been chosen. Typically 2 Libs and 2 ALP. That's what happened in 2019. And it takes another 360 or so counts to get the 5th and 6th senator. Next slide. Thanks, Kate. Next slide. Thank you. So from count 1, now I promise not to go through 367 counts, but after first preferences, the Libs and ALP, as I said, have got two quotas. The Greens had 0.74 quotas, so they haven't got anyone elected yet. We had One Nation with 0.2 of a quota, Derryn Hinch Justice Party with 0.2 of a quota, and then the rest had 1.1 of a quota or less. Next slide. Let's keep counting. So at count 5, we've got 4 senators elected already. You'll notice that the Libs have now used up 2 of their quotas, and they've got 0.51 of a quota remainder. The ALP's got 0.17 of a quota remainder. These remainders go to their 3rd candidate on the list. The Greens have still got their 0.74 quota that they started with. This is called a part quota. Similarly with One Nation and the Derryn Hinch Justice Party. All the rest, all the multitude of columns on the ballot paper only add up to another 1.2 quotas. So you've got many candidates to be excluded. And I've said here, who is the weakest link? Well, it happens on count 5. The first weakest link is excluded with only 22 votes. So bye-bye that candidate. Next slide, please. Okay, so we go up to about count 340. We've zoomed along here, and all the candidates in the micro parties are gone. We only have 1 candidate left in the few minor parties. That's the DLP, the United Australia Party, and Shooters, Farmers and Fishers are still hanging in there. So if you look at the second last column, that 0.4 is those guys. You've got One Nation and Derryn Hinch neck and neck trying to get a senator. We've got the Greens who have managed to get their 1 quota, so they are the 5th senator. And the Libs, Nats are still in the lead with the highest remainders. They've managed to get up to 0.8. So the next thing to happen is we lose the DLP, we lose the ALP, the 3rd candidate, and One Nation is the 3rd last candidate remaining, and they disappear on the next slide. Next slide, please. And so the final count, we've only got 2 candidates left for the 6th senator. And Derryn Hinch gets to 0.6. The Lib Nats got 0.93 of a quota. Now you say, well, that's not a full quota, but they are the best of the remaining 2 in the race for last senator. So the question is, where did all these votes go? I've got a little note there that says when the One Nation was excluded, about the same number of votes went to Lib and Derryn Hinch Justice Party, but 96,000 votes were exhausted. Now, that means there were 96,000 ballot papers that were on the One Nation pile of votes that did not have Derryn Hinch or the Libs box ticked. And so they had nowhere to go. And that's what we call exhausted. In fact, about 260,000 votes were exhausted in the last election, which is about half a quota, quite an enormous amount. Next slide, please. So what does success for an independent candidate look like? Well, of course, you've got to have a box above the line. If you don't have a box above the line, you've only got 5% of the whole electorate can possibly vote for you, because 95% vote above the line. You must be competitive in highest remainders, so that column there that shows up who's got the highest remainder or part quota after round one, if you like. So here's a scenario. Lib Nats with a little bit less than they got in 2019. ALP with a little bit more. Let's put them on equal footing. Greens with about the same, 0.8. Susan for the Senate, 0.5 of the quota. And next minor, perhaps Darren Hinch will have another go, or someone else, 0.2, and the rest. Once the 2 quotas for Libs and 2 quotas for ALP are used up, we've got the race for 5th and 6th senator. The Greens probably will pick up that 5th Senate seat. And if the independents got 0.5 of a quota, good chance, as long as there's a good transfer of preferences go that way, of picking up the 6th Senate seat. Next slide. So a successful campaign will mean gaining 270,000 first preference votes, or 0.5 of a quota. And that would be fantastic. Really good chance of being elected. If you have 150,000 first preferences, it's also highly competitive. That's more than One Nation and more than Darren Hinch started with. And it'll all hinge on how many preferences you get from other sources. And getting preferences from everybody needs to be a priority, because if Susan's got, if voters put any number against her column, box, or against her name, it could be saved from being exhausted and be a vote for Susan.
Good evening, everyone. And thanks to Susan and Tony and the team for the invite. Kate, perhaps I can get you to show the first image of the ballot paper from the last election. I'm not sure which state this is from, but it's a fairly common experience for Senate elections and Senate ballot papers around Australia. So in Victoria at the 2019 federal election, there was 82 candidates for 6 Senate spots in Victoria. And you can see on that ballot paper that's incredibly long, if you can't remember it back to the election, that there's a big black line running through the middle of it. But ultimately, this is the paper that's appearing before your average voter, in addition to their local ballot paper for their electorate, which is generally much smaller. So what I want to do is just show you a sample ballot paper and run through that and how these ballot papers are arranged. Kate, could I get the next slide, please? So as Tony mentioned, 95% of people vote above the line. So this is a sample ballot paper from the Australian Electoral Commission. And you can see that the dark line running horizontally, and above the line, the instructions are that people are to, or voters are to number 6 boxes in order of preference. If they don't, they can number less or more and the vote is still valid. So what happens with, what's happened on this, or going column by column. So if we look at the left-hand column, we'll see that there's a logo with a 5 in it and a party name. So what this is actually a registered party with the AEC, and it will have a logo above an empty box, and then underneath it'll have the name of the party, whether it's, you know, Liberal Party, Labor Party, Greens, something like that. But it is above the line. The next column, column B, is also above the line. It's the same situation. It's a registered party. It's above the line. With column C, what's happened there is that you've got 2 registered parties, and they've asked to be grouped on the ballot paper. And this is what the National Party and the Liberals normally do. And it attracts a bigger block of votes and helps them get more seats in the electorate or in the elections, or it certainly did in 2019. So again, it's a single vote, and where those votes flow between the parties is subject to the agreement between the parties. Column D and column E are the same situation where you've got a single party that's above the line. What we've got in column G, I wanted to go to the column with the 4 in the thing. That is an ungrouped party. So basically the candidates that are in that group, and you'll see below the line there's actually 4 candidates within that group, but they don't get to put their logo and they don't get to put a name above the line where the voting box is. So these candidates are all independent candidates. There's no formal party, but independent candidates can, if they group together, ask to be grouped together, and they will get a box above the line, but it is a non-marked box. And then the final column, which doesn't even get a letter, the one on the far right, is called ungrouped, and that's all the other independents that have chosen not to be grouped, and they can only be voted for by people voting below the line. It's important to remember, and I'll say it again, and after and repeat what Tony said, 95% of voters vote above the line. Most of them put 6 numbers and will vote 1 to 6, but some of them only vote 1, and some of them will vote, 12 boxes above the line. But most of them are voting above the line. So a vote above the line, so your first preference above the line in this example ballot paper is in column C. The votes that group get are distributed to the candidates that are sitting below the line in the order that they appear in. So basically all the votes of that group will go to the lead candidate of that group. And then, as Tony described, if that person gets a quota, then the excess votes will flow to the second candidate. So that's how the voting system works, and this is the ballot paper that is presented to the voters. Now it's really important. Well, it's impossible to be below the line and be elected. It's mathematically impossible to be elected with only 5% of the vote. So you have to be above the line, and it's better to be above the line with a logo and with your party name written above and below the voting box. It's more eye-catching. It makes you look like a more significant player on the ballot paper. And I think it's important to remember that a lot of voters are not particularly engaged. So it's important that you're on an equal footing with the parties when you're going into the election and having this ballot paper presented to voters. So it's essential to be above the line, which means you either have to be part of a registered organisation. I'm trying to avoid using the word party, or you have to be, the second best option is to be grouped with other independents. And normally that grouping would be aligned, but that grouping will have to decide who gets to be the lead candidate for that group. Basically the rules changed, and Tony will correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 2016. The rules changed with what happened with the Motorist Enthusiast Party and the old preference whispering, and essentially it's not really possible anymore, because while parties may give a how to vote card, they can't flow their preferences automatically to another group or another candidate. Their preferences can only go down their group until they're exhausted, and then the voter's choice of the number 2, second preference, is the party that will get the next votes. So that's the sample of the Senate ballot paper, and that's why, you know, having being above the line is essential, and being in a registered organisation is very advantageous as well. It gives you you're on the level playing field with the major parties. Okay.
As Matt has said, the AEC has you must register a party to be above the line. The numbers have changed from 500 people in a registered party to 1,500 people in a registered party. This system serves large parties very well. It does not serve minor parties very well at all. So the options to go above the line with a group of people who have already formed a party and get the numbers behind that party. One of those options is Independent Voices for the Senate. It's gathering some momentum at the moment. Matt Denning, who was speaking to us, he and Stuart Waters and another group of people have been putting that together. That's one option. It hasn't got its numbers yet. It would need to get its numbers. Another option would be to start a brand new party from scratch. And that would mean a constitution, a name, a logo, and everything. And that would be something like Susan for the Senate. My preference has not been to do that so far, because I want whatever happens in getting in as an independent to be able to be something that goes beyond my lifetime in the Senate. This is about having a pathway that is there as a real pathway. The other option, and it may have to be used as an option anyway, is to find some like-minded, value-centered people and go into that ungrouped, into that grouped area. So there's no logo above the line, but people could put a number above the line. So this depends on very high name recognition. And I'm not a party brand. I'm not an individual with a Darren Hinge type name, but we have the power of people. I am independent. I'm not a member of a party. I've never been a member of a party, and I don't have a particular preference. I think we need good quality, community-minded independents. So name recognition is going to be incredibly important. Getting people to fill me in so that when they do their numbers, somewhere in those numbers, I'm appearing on their numbering. That is really important.